Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's The Women Leading Show. And today I'm joined, as always, by my fabulous co-hosts, the lovely Jo Baldwin-Trott and the fabulous Jo Sumner.
Hi, guys.
And today we're also joined by one of our fellow authors, all the way from Australia, the fabulous Dave Clare.
Hey, hello, ladies.
Hi, and it's evening, isn't it, Dave, where you are? So I'm conscious I've just said good morning, and I'm a little bit late in the day for that for you.
That's quite all right. It's 5 p.m. here, but it's still great.
But it does mean that you can probably tell us how today's going to pan out for us, since you've already lived it.
Today is amazing. The weather is unbelievable, and the amount of work you girls got done today was I just couldn't believe how much you got done today and how much impact you had on the world today. It was quite amazing to look back and see it all. Now all you have to do is live up to it.
But knowing that we've already achieved it is going to make it so much easier.
You just get out there and do it today. That's all you got to do.
Fantastic. So today we thought we would do something a little bit different. Normally we start with our debate and chat and then head into a little bit more detail about our fabulous guests and authors. And we thought we'd switch it up a little bit. So we're going to start with learning a little bit more, Dave, about you and your chapter. So before I head into that, I wanted to share with the audience a little bit more about you. So Dave works with SMA leaders to productively transform their lives and their businesses to evolve to stay relevant in the hearts and minds of the people that they serve. He's the CEO and founder of Circle Leadership and ambassador for the Pacific region for Global Company Culture Association, which is dedicated to driving an evolution at work. And your chapter in the Women Leading book was focused on your dad as your main role model from a business inspiration, but you recognize also the role of your mother. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And please also understand that I'm also a mentor for Inspiring Rare Birds. I was the very first male mentor for the female entrepreneurs and leaders here in Australia. And that I started five years ago almost now. And now 40% of the mentors are men.
That's brilliant.
So, yeah, and that actually all started because it leads into my chapter of my book, of the book there, that is, my daughter, it actually started with my daughter approaching me with a business idea she had back when she was probably 15, and which was 6 years ago for her now. And as a business leadership coach and everything that I do, I asked her, like, well, great, like, who are some of the role models or people that inspire you that you could probably look to and look at how they do business, and because she wasn't going to listen to Dad, right? There was no
of course not.
And so she could rattle off a few names of people that she knows that she'd been exposed to, but none of them were women. And that really got me to thinking, like, is this the world that we're creating, where my daughter doesn't have strong female characters in her life and role models that she can look up to other than what they portray in the movies? And then it was only months later when I saw the opportunity that they were looking for mentors for women with Inspiring Rare Birds, that I actually then reached out to Jo Burston. It must be a Jo thing, I'm not sure, but Jo Burston, and then said to her, look, as a male, I'm happy to put my hand up because I'd love to do it, and here's my reasons why, which same reasons. And if there's any women out there who would prefer to have a male mentor, just let me know. If not, I totally understand. I won't be offended or upset. I'll just assume the fetal position in the corner and cry for the next little while. But and they reached out and said, yes, there's some people. So then I just started that mentoring journey, because for me, I thought, well, what can I do? And this is what the chapter's about. Like, what can I do to contribute? I'm one of those either put up or shut up. And then my daughter didn't have any role models, so what could I do? And I found a way to at least do something that I could to show her that Dad's doing something to help women like her, now a young woman like herself, to have more stronger role models and whatever I could. But through that journey, the fascinating part was that it really got me to start to question my own, like I said, my philosophy was that, when my thoughts were that I got my leadership from my dad. Dad was the leader and everything like that. And so my thoughts were that I got all this sort of stuff from Dad. And, the business ethics and his work ethic and everything like that, most likely. But when I thought about leadership and the way that my compassion and my level of care that I have for my clients, the people in my teams and the stuff that I've led over the years, it really got me to start thinking that, that it was the strength of my feminine energy that was actually far greater than the masculine energy that I had, that I got from my dad. And it made me realize it was actually my mom who was the real person I learned most of my leadership stuff through, although I didn't realize it at the time, that her strength and her compassion and her empathy and all these things that are really important in leadership in the world today, I got from her. And so that's what I wanted to write about when given the opportunity to participate in Women Leading, was to share the two strongest inspirations in my life from a leadership point of view were my daughter, to inspire me to do something, and my mother, who gave me the toolkit to do it.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it, how sometimes we find out that we get our strength from something that we hadn't realized. I know I spent a lot of my career concerned that people would find out that I was an ex-hairdresser and that was my vulnerability. And I now realize it was my greatest lesson in leadership, because it taught you to be interested in people, to listen to them, to understand what was important to them. And actually, that's kind of what leaders need to do these days, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. When you would have learned the art of asking questions and engaging in communication and dialogue and sharing, and also listening to the person about with the style they wanted their hair and all that, and being able to really interpret it and visualize and picture, and all these amazing transferable skills that would allow you to be an outstanding leader that you are, and without even realizing it. And a lot of people, we look at what we do instead of what we're learning from what we're doing. And I think that, like, the amazing, I was just working with the music school, and we're talking about one of the young girls and how she's more into athletics now, and she's a sprinter. She does the 200 meters, and the young girl, we're talking to her about it, and she, like, her dad owns the music school, and she was forced into music and didn't feel like she learned anything from music and didn't enjoy. And I talked to her about when she's running, what are some of the important things about, when you're running the 200 meters to make you successful at running, apart from your fitness. And she's like, it's stride and the rhythm of everything. And I'm like, right, so you've learned rhythm and tempo and, and harmony and all your parts working together. And I said, that's music.
I love it.
And it's fascinating when you see how you can take hairdressing or running and connect it to music or connect it to leadership. There's lessons in everything that we can transfer if we're just willing to look.
Absolutely. I just love it. And there is such transferable skills in everything we do, isn't it? We see that when we see our children and how they learn and grow. There's just an opportunity always for us to continue to develop and evolve, isn't there? I'm very conscious. I know, Jo BT, you had got a question, hadn't you, for Dave?
Yeah, so we kind of covered this last week. Is my sound okay now? Because it's a bit dodgy earlier. Is that, yeah, we're good? Okay, so we covered this last week, actually, Dave, even, and it would have been great to have you on there too. But role models is a really important factor of the women leading message. And,
yes.
And you really nailed it for me when in your chapter, because you really brought to light the fact that actually your daughter was really almost searching for female role models and struggled to find them. And I was in London last week going around Parliament Square, all these wonderful male statues of role models for men. And there was one of a woman, and around the bottom of the statue in the concrete, there was about 40 women with pictures about this big. So that to me underpins the problem with role models, is that we have so many, but actually they're just not out there. We don't know about them. So I'd just like you to sort of explain what you feel about that as a man, and that, because that's definitely my perception, and what you experienced again with your daughter, because daughters, sons, we all need role models, but especially children.
Yeah, and I think that's such a valid point. Here's the insanity of my brain. As you're talking about that, my first thought went to, when you talk about monuments, and I'm thinking Mount Rushmore is a thing of all men, right? If that was women, it would be Mount Caremore.
That's brilliant. I love that. We need a Mount Caremore. Get on it.
Yeah, we should have a whole thing dedicated to women who actually care about humans and people. And Mount Rushmore is like rush more, do more, get more done. It's all this. It really speaks to, once again, masculine energy in terms of action and do, whereas feminine energy is more about being and care and nurture. And so we could have Mount Caremore, and we'd have all these beautiful, amazing human beings that are women that we should be celebrating. But and when it comes to monuments, it's fascinating, because a man can accomplish something as the protagonist and the hero, and he'll get a statue, whereas a woman almost has to be the antagonist to get a statue. Like if you look at the Rosa Parks and the lady who ran the Boston Marathon, they were put as like people who were almost like disruptors, but in, you know, trying to get into men's world and stuff like that, instead of just because of their own accomplishments. But they had to actually create a problem and a thing to actually get recognized. And I think historically that's the problem. Well, that one of the problems that I would see is that the way we've honored men is the protagonist, the hero, and women it's almost as the villain who's had to break into the man's world, and then we honor her many years later because of it.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, Dave, because what I hear when you're saying that is, rather, what I responded when you were saying that is, but I think that that is the beauty of women, is this ability to sort of observe what's happening and then to go, no, actually, that's not right. And in some cases, to be able to find that moment of either just, I can't take it anymore, or other resources and support around them that they can speak truth to power. And one of the things I was thinking about, this question that we set ourselves for this, which is what next for feminism? And I was thinking about it and thinking the quiet work of a woman like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't know if any of you seen the Netflix documentary, but it is absolutely astonishing to see her career set out and these relatively junior roles in which she sets out to create essentially a form of case law which establishes in law the freedoms of women as equal, the rights of women as equal. And it's this quiet, determined, absolutely looking out for the moment to disrupt the general paradigm. I was about to say the patriarchal paradigm, but I think we might need to move away from that and start to be more inclusive, because surely feminism now needs inclusivity and to perhaps walk away from the divisive protagonist, antagonist side. But that's my reflection, and I'm interested to know what you think in response.
I would agree with you. Like let's say the women, even though RBG, she was like slow but sure that she was disrupting. She had to do something disruptive to get there. You know, and to me, whereas men could do disruptive things today, more disruptive than ever. But like before, it was because they were just acclaimed in their field. They weren't doing anything disruptive, and that they didn't have to do much to get recognized. But women historically in the past have had to do something disruptive, whether it was a slow trickle or actually a big slap in the face to do something to. And please understand, this is premised on the fact that I don't agree with it. I'm just saying that my observation is that, and it certainly saddens me to think that that's the way it was. But does it have to stay that way? I guess is the part of it. But I agree with you. But to me, it's still, even if it's a slow trickle or it's a full on, it's still have to disrupt to get attention. You know, and I would hope that that's beyond us and behind us. You know, but we have to learn. You know, we have to be able to look back to. You know, there's a Maya Angelou quote. I'll probably do it wrong, but you know, to understand where we're going, we need to understand where we've been. And so, and I've always been, you know, like honor the past, but embrace the future. We have to honor that and the challenges and the trials and tribulations that people have been through. In this case, ladies. But
one of the things that strikes me about that is that it's surely incumbent on all of us to be more open-minded, so that we spot the moment when somebody's having to disrupt, whether they're male or female, but that we have the open mind and the ability to go, well, it might have been done like this for hundreds of years, but it doesn't mean it's right. And to have a sense of responsibility. I mean, I'm always talking about self-responsibility because that's my thing. And I think that's how we change the world, is taking responsibility, but radical responsibility for ourselves. And you change the world by changing yourself. So that means each one of us has to be responsible for spotting, when is somebody trying to disrupt my predominant paradigm? You know, when is somebody telling me that the way I'm doing something isn't actually what's serving the highest good? And I think if we could do that, we might be able to not have these massive gestures. Again, as you say, whether it's the slow trickle or the slap in the face, we might not need to get to that point. I'm very mindful of the fact that on climate change, here in the UK anyway, we still absolutely need the sort of massive demonstration, and it's like it's not getting anywhere anyway. You know, it has more of the feeling of what is it that we're going to have to do? How big is it going to have to be? But putting that aside, hopefully over time we can move it forward. I'm curious where people end up with this. What next for feminism?
Did you want my answer on that?
I want all of your answers on that, but I'm handing it back to Kim.
I'll go, Kim. I'll come after you.
Okay, thank you. So, I agree. I think we need to move forward. I think we need to be respectful of the past and the lessons that we've learned from it. But I think we need to move forward in equality. We had this debate, didn't we, Jo, last week? That was sometimes the pendulum swings too far in either direction, doesn't it? And actually, what we're actually all asking for is to be treated equally, irrelevant of our gender, of our race, of our culture, of our religion. How do we create a society where we recognise that when you cut us, we bleed, all of us, irrelevant of anything else? So why can't we just recognise the uniqueness of us all and embrace that, rather than try and box us into corners, I guess? Because once we do embrace that, imagine what an amazing world we'll live in. But how we do that, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it's such an easy thing to do, isn't it? Just treat everybody with the respect you would like to be treated with yourself. But we seem to struggle to do that.
I think, and I understand that that's like what we would call the golden rule. You know, treat others as you would like to be treated. And I think that's a dangerous rule, because how I'd like to be treated might be totally different to how any of you ladies would like to be treated. And this is really not to attack the commentary, but it to me, I see a lot of organizations like, respect. We have to respect, and that means, treat others as you want to be treated. I said, well, if this Muslim person or this, transgender person or this white, black, male, female doesn't want to be treated like that, but that's how you want to be treated, should we be respectful of how each other want to be treated and treat people with that level of respect?
No, it's a great point, Dave. And I guess for me, the way I always want to be treated is to have somebody listen to me. And therefore, actually, if I listened to the other person, I'd know how they wanted to be treated. But it's a really valid point. If you don't make that distinction really clear, you could inadvertently offend the other person, because you're actually just going, well, I like red, so I'm going to assume everybody else likes red, and I'm going to, you could enforce your beliefs and opinion on somebody. Whereas for me, I guess, I think deep down every human being wants to be listened to and wants to be understood. And if we always seek to understand and we seek to listen, doesn't mean to say that we will always agree. But I guess for me, it's okay to disagree, but never to disrespect. And it's about recognizing that we can be different and embrace that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, and this is probably some of the challenges that women have faced, where men are trying to treat women like men in business, instead of saying, what is the amazing brilliance that woman or the feminine brings in, instead of trying to turn it into man, why can't we pull out of the amazing woman of it? What's the amazing part? But no, you have to be treated like this, and you have to be able to do that. You can't you can't have babies. You have to stay at work. You get it's all this crap that we throw on because we're trying to treat them like, okay, you want to be equal? Then I'll show you equal. It's like, it's just wrong.
I think the maternity is like a whole show. We need to, those kind of conditions that are in the employment environment are toxic, are dangerous, are hideous, and they are so ripe that they haven't gone anywhere. I think there's so much in that, Dave. But I'd like to sort of flip it on its head a little bit, because I also know, and I'm from very many years of helping women like this, that actually we can show up too much trying to be a man. And many women do that, and I think this is where it really starts to go quite wrong, is when we're just not being true to ourselves. And there are many women that really feel like they have to adopt behaviors, adopt dress, and really create a different style of leadership, and management that doesn't feel right for them, but feels like it will help them fit in. And you guys know I do a lot of work for potential parliamentarians, MPs, female MPs with 50/50 Parliament. And so many of them say, well, you know, I feel like I've got to behave like this. And this is why Jo's work is so important, because actually it comes back to self, recognizing how you're feeling, and being true to that, you know, which comes from compassion, doesn't it? But, you know, I think that's a really big issue too. And, you know, you see it so much that women just, they kind of take it too far. And I was guilty of that in the past in one of my roles, sure. But, you know, I think compassion is the biggest word that I feel like this should come out of 2020. And you know, compassion for ourselves, for others, and respect, like you said, Kim.
You know, when you think about some of the thing they talk about from a leadership world today is we're looking for that authenticity, the vulnerability of our leaders. We're looking for all that. And that just speaks to what you're talking about there, Jo. Is like, you know, I wrote down here some notes from my mind. It's just like empathy, vulnerability, like these are the new powers in leadership. And here we are then, if we're trying to fit into what was, or the way we think, because we're afraid to be vulnerable, we're afraid to be authentic, we're afraid to demonstrate that empathy or the compassion, well, then we're going to the opposite direction again. It's like, no, the world's like, ladies, the world is swinging in your favor. Okay, like feminism, the world is this. When I think about the future of feminism and that, the world is finally coming around to the fact that you guys are way better at this than we are as men. Like, I've always said that we should sack every male politician, put a women in power. Look at Jacinta Ardern down in New Zealand. Like, let the women have a go. We've screwed it up enough. We've shown that men are, on average here, are not good at this stuff. It's all about politics. It's not about leadership. The only leader that's in the world today is Jacinta. Agree with her leadership style or not, but she's doing an amazing job leading her people because she cares about people. And in the whole episode that we could do on like maternity and all that, once again, now everyone has realized we can work from home. Women don't have to give up their careers or perceivably give up their careers or, you know, or give up spending time with their children, because we can all work from home now and we can find a way to balance both, and we can, or get harmony within both. I'm not a big fan of balance because, but to me it's more about harmony and rhythm to life. But we can have women that can stay at home and still work, and because work's coming to home, though the whole market has shifted, saying, hey, working from home isn't as bad as we thought it would be. Yeah. It's possible. So we can have movement in that space. We can make advancements there. We don't have to give up.
Absolutely that. And for me, with the importance of inclusion in feminism, it also includes all the women who have no interest whatsoever in being a mother. Yeah. And for whom these questions are not so, you know, that particular set of questions are no relevance really, other than in supporting other women. I'm really mindful of something that has been very powerful in my own life about how to speak up. So I wrote down for myself, what do I think feminism needs now? And it's speak up, take up space. Notice when your reference point is a man, and see if that's actually required, you know, whether you can drop that as the reference, the continuous reference. Actively look for where other women need help, but also all others. And it really put me in mind of how I did that for myself. And it's a Brené Brown piece of advice. And she, to me, is one of the most amazing female leaders out there. And she talks about, don't shrink, don't puff up, stay in your sacred ground. So when you're coming into a conversation, when you're coming into a situation where you need to be heard and you're challenged by that, and you might have a personal tendency to either shrink or puff up, you just remind yourself, don't. Stay in my sacred ground and speak from that, and recognize, this is the bit that I work with people on, is recognize the challenge, meet it the best you can, and then come away and care for yourself. Because the bit where I think people get stress and actually trauma from their attempts to speak up is because they don't do the taking away, the recognition of the level of challenge, the acknowledgement of what they did well, where they could do something differently in the future, and then care for themselves. And we need to get good at doing that bit. That's I think where we'll be able to shuck off that tendency to rush more, right? Rush more, do more, achieve more. Oh my goodness, it's so exhausting
Care
even
more.
to say it. Right. Well, we want to care more, but we don't want to care to the expense of our own well-being.
No, care more about ourselves.
Yes.
And be okay with it. It's not selfish.
Right.
Like I look at, once again, get back to my mother, she would put all of us ahead of herself. That's what a mother would do, right? And understandable, and empathize with that. But you can't pour from an empty jug. So if you don't care for yourself, then she builds a network or an infrastructure all around her where we're all reliant on her. And then all of a sudden, she implodes. Right? And then the whole infrastructure falls down because she didn't take care of herself first.
Well, and to me, it's a challenge, isn't it? Because I think mothers around the world do that, right? Mothers around the world are absolutely trained. I come last, and all the others have to come first. And I'm with you, Dave, in the sense that I feel I've had to spend my adulthood unlearning that journey from my mum, because she was the same. She always and continues to put us first. And I have that sense of, okay, but actually, if I'm going to be a true agent of change for what I want to see in the world, I actually can't afford to do that. And there's a point at which you have to understand, I feel, that your primary relationship is with yourself. You have to nail that first. And that's back to Jo's point about helping parliamentarians to really lead in the way that is true to them.
Yeah, because I think that the mindset you're creating for yourself by putting yourself last at the bottom of the pile is the kind of mindset that then manifests as, I can't show up as fully me. I can't be the one making the decision in the boardroom. I can't be the one speaking up the loudest to be heard. All those, traits that so many women have been identified with, it makes sense that it stems from this training that actually, oh, hold on a minute, what do women do? Well, my mum, like you just said, Jo, we're used to seeing that. And actually, one of my blessings of my growing up was my mother was very adamant about her career, and that's helped me for sure as part of one of my role models to really be clear and allow myself to make those decisions, to not always let my kids be first. And actually, that we're all valued. We all have our self-worth to be identified in families. I think actually we just hit on the core of why so many women struggle to really show up, because they don't feel like they own that space, because they don't feel like they have that duty or that responsibility almost. And that is a big thing that we need to deal with. That is a big thing to change for sure.
Yeah, and I think when Jo said, about taking space, I would say, like, I get the concept, but it'd be like owning your space and holding your space. Don't be afraid to hold your space. You don't have to take more space than is needed. That's puffing up or whatever, but hold your space. You as a human being, you should be able to, own your space and hold your space. And once again, that's the whole authenticity and everything like that. And I think that to me is what's really important here. Is we've had it so far one way, and now we're dangerous to go, like what always happens, we go totally the opposite way, and see all the stuff. Then that's when the whole feminism went from, it was like anti-maleism, not feminism. It was, and we eventually go, right? And if we could just actually go to a place where we hold, own that and hold that space and be strong, and like there's nothing wrong with saying, no, this is who I am and this is what I'm about. Male, female, doesn't matter. Like in this case, obviously women, but I would say hold your space and own your space for sure. You don't need to take more. You don't need to give away any of it either.
Well, except I'm going to come back on that actually, because the reason that I use take up your space is that women tend to feel that they don't have any space, right? The whole point is entirely to negate yourself and your needs, and to purely be the container in which everybody else thrives. So I can hear what you're saying in the sense of, once you've established in yourself you have the right to space, right? Then hold it. And I think that's very important. And we need to equip people, with male or female, with what's required to hold space. because that can be a universal problem, is that I don't feel like I can hold my space. And then I think that's where people over time run into self-esteem issues, is precisely because holding their own space, owning their space, is such a challenge.
Yeah, well, that takes a tremendous inner strength, confidence, and are we, conditioning? Like that is what I think about with my daughter. I think have I conditioned her, and like she's such an amazing human being. Like I'm just like sometimes I go like I don't think I had any impact on that, but like wow, look at her. Wanted to move out of home with her boyfriend. Is that she's like 17, almost 18. I said, until you're 18, you can't move out because I'm legally responsible for you. I'm doing whatever I can, throwing anything I can to keep her. But she was holding her space. And this is what I'm talking about. Like she owned it. She holding her space. She said, Dad, you raised us to be independent children, and I'm asking you to allow me to be independent. I'm like, damn you.
Throwing your own quote back at you.
But I couldn't be more proud. But once again, then I had a word to the boyfriend and just made sure he understood that he's now taking on greater responsibility, because when I'm not around, he's got to be there to make sure that, unfortunately, the masculine male in me wants to protect my daughter, and although I want her to find her own way in the world, but I still can't help sometimes the primitive part of me going, "This is my little baby." But she held her space, and I go like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And like to me as a dad, like that's such a powerful, to see that she owned her space, she held her space, that we did raise her to be independent, that she could look after herself, and she knew we'd always be there if she needed us. So, but that's just how do we do more of that? How do we get more of that into the world? And whether, fathers and daughters, and that's fine, but how do we do that with, I used to lead an organization called ATC. It was a not-for-profit that helped kids get apprenticeships and traineeships for 15 to 21-year-olds. And I took it as my duty, my obligation, to help that person understand how their space belongs in, like as an employee or in an organization. I was their first boss, and it was my duty to show them what leadership should be about and how they should be treated and respected in the workplace. Whereas unfortunately, we belittle and we scream and we yell and we harass and we and especially young people coming in. So if any leader out there is listening to this and you have an opportunity to employ young people, it is your duty, your obligation to show that person what leadership should be about and how they should be respected in the workplace. Even if they're different to you, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Because we got to start those moments that Jo was talking about. Every moment we can. Fathers and daughters, moms and daughters, whatever it is, employees. When you're like, I employed a lot of young ladies as our directors of first impression, and I said, your job is more important than mine, because you're the first point of contact that anyone, either on the phone or via email or when they walk in the door, you're the first person that they see, and you represent our organization. And anything you do is far more important than anything I will ever do.
And isn't it about standards? Because you're saying that from the outset, you're creating that standard, and I think culture plays such a big part in where things are going wrong and still going wrong. But you're creating a different culture by making that intention, Dave, and that's really key. And I think we have to sort of slightly overemphasize these kind of really valid points to ensure that these cultures start to change. Because managers around in departments or whatever, they should not be allowing this kind of sort of passive aggression towards women, towards anyone, but they shouldn't be allowing it, and it is allowed, and people get away with it. I know
you don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate.
It shouldn't be. So managers should lead the way by being more prominent and more decisive and saying, actually, that isn't right. And I think that's another really key factor that you guys that teach. You're very much leadership coaches. I think that's really important, that is really ingrained, and it's time to really address those kind of negative statements or just that underpinning feeling that actually it's the men that get hurt. And I'm sorry, but it's really true. This still exists. This hasn't gone anywhere. That will help, I think.
Yeah, are you?
I think it.
Sorry.
Okay. There you go.
I'll just add, women aren't made the same as men, and men aren't made the same as women. I mean, certainly skeletally, where there's very strong similarities and everything, but there's still, right? And as I told my children as they were growing up, and it applies to this as well, is you are made different, to make a difference. And I said, why am I the same as anybody else, Dad? How come and I'm like, kids and male, my sons and my daughter, you were both, all of you made different to make a difference. And I would say, women, you were made different to make a difference. And it's time that roar was heard. And obviously, what can we do to support it? And then, because we need that difference. I'm so glad I have feminine energy as a leader, and I realized it. And it took me forever. I'm a bit of a slow learner, but I finally realized it. And I was able to embrace it and harness it even more. It's just served me at such high levels in everything that I've done. And if I hadn't recognized it, or I suppressed it because I had to be man and man up and do all this stuff as a man, it would be crazy.
But I think it is. It's those labels that we put on ourselves, isn't it? And we've all got a masculine and a feminine side, and actually it's the balance of both that allows us to be the best that we can be. And like you said with your daughter, you totally recognize that she is a unique and independent and strong and capable woman, but you still want to protect and look after her. Just like as a mother, I want to look after and protect my little one, even though I also know that she's a tough little cookie and she knows how to do a lot of this stuff. It's our compassion for each other as human beings, isn't it, that you just want to keep the people that you care for safe. And I think for me, the step we need to take is to get leaders to understand, to recognize and to embrace that their role is to care for the people that they lead. Because I think once you get yourself in that space, we can all understand what that means. We all understand what it means to care for somebody. And I think if we can deliver that would allow us to actually level the playing fields, because it becomes less relevant whether or not whether we're female or male, but we're embracing both sides of who we are, and that actually will, I think, create more balance. I don't know if people agree.
I feel in terms of, I really strongly agree, and I want to draw out the element of protection is really important, because what you asked this question, I think it was Dave who said, what is it that we need to do to help? And one of the things we need to do to help so that voices can be heard is make it safe to speak. It is still not safe in many different situations for women to speak about the ways in which they are subjected to aggression. And that really is what leaders can do, is use that warrior energy, whether they're male or female, doesn't make any difference. Use the warrior energy, that protective energy, to create safety for the people who are still essentially regarded as whistleblowers. And we know that the act of whistleblowing is a dangerous one. That's why people have to screw up their courage to do it and get to this point where I literally cannot tolerate it anymore doing anything else. It shouldn't have to be at that level. And, I know that Jo's engaged on a book around mental health at the moment. And in particular, I'm super conscious of the suicide rate among men. Well, look, frankly, we shouldn't be pushing ourselves, male or female, to the point you can't tolerate any more. So I think that comes down to safety, creating safety for each other, and that will come through care. What Kim has just said about creating leadership, your role is to care for your people. And that fundamentally includes that base chakra place you have to start, which is safety.
Yeah, emotional, mental, before physical even.
Yes.
So my definition of leadership is, leadership's all about helping other people become the best version of themselves so they can do their life's best work while they're in your care and beyond. And that means I care about you as a human being first, employee second. And, and if you look at that from a feminine and masculine point of view, being is feminine energy, doing is masculine energy, right? So it's saying I care about you as a human being first, I care about you first, and then I care about what you do while you're here. And if we can really understand and really pull that apart, and imagine that if I actually just said, I actually care about who you are as a human, and then help you be the best human you can be, and then I know you'll do your best work and you'll apply your masculine energy here if I take care of that other part first. And this is why I think that, like I said, the world is coming around, and we just need to make sure we grab it and hold our space and own it, and take that space that is ours to hold. And I think this is just the time it's coming. Like this, they talk about the different waves of feminism, whether it's whatever way you want to look at it, like gone from voting to bra burning to marginalized to fempowerment. Like I think this is now the time of empathy, vulnerability, and like we talked about, we sort of coming back full circle that the ways of working is more accessible. There's a distributed way of working now, and there's more greater opportunities for that where we should be vulnerable and authentic, and all these things favor the feminine energy.
I love it. Dave, we could chat to you all day.
Yeah.
I'm very conscious that we have slightly overrun. But let's have this chat again. I think it would be great to get you back on another show, because we could talk for hours, and you're always just so insightful and have got such great advice, wisdom and energy that I think is really relevant for where we are right now. I hope everybody else has enjoyed today as much as I have. And if you would like to join us next time, it's the 6th of November at 12 p.m, where we're joined by 2 more of our lovely authors, Tanya Adams and Sonal Badiani. Until then, everybody, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and enjoy life. Thanks all for coming.